on.
Awesome, thank you. Good morning to all of our friends joining us live from YouTube. So we're just going to do a couple trivia questions before we get started, so our students all have a chance to join in, get their videos and microphones working, and practice answering some poll questions. So this question is, aquaculture now accounts for how much seafood consumed globally? So this is like fish farming. How much seafood do we get from farmed fisheries? So is it A, 72%, B, 52%, C, 32%, or D, 12%? What do we think? Aquaculture. And we'll just give you guys a couple minutes for this one because we do still have one more trivia question. I see we've got a 72 and a 52, pretty big numbers. Anybody think it's a smaller amount? Oh, we're spreading out. We've got an A, B, and a C. Okay, and if you guys are joining us from YouTube, unfortunately, you can't participate in the live polls, but you can answer in the chat. So if you would like to answer any of our trivia questions, just type your answers in the chat, and my colleague Sarah can transfer your answers over to us so we can see what you think. So it looks like a lot of us think it's B, 52%. And that's correct. So global seafood reached a level of 175 million metric tons in 2018. So 23 million of those metric tons go to human consumption. So I don't know about you guys, but that number is so big, my brain basically can't even fathom how big it is. So 179 million metric tons.
Do you guys need some more milkies?
Okay, and we'll do one more question before we get going with our official presentation here. Seafood is the primary source of protein for how many people in the world?
And then I'll pump right away here. I think
You should have a poll coming up on your screen now. How many people in the world get most of their protein from seafood? So I know where I am in North America, we eat a lot of red meat and poultry, but a lot of other places in the world do eat a lot of seafood. So how many people in the world do we think eat mostly seafood for protein? Ooh, we're looking at the big numbers here. How many people do we even have on the world now? Does anybody know? Is it 7 billion, 8 billion? I know there was some sort of news article a few days ago that we reached some sort of new milestone, but I don't remember what it was. And I'll give you guys one more minute for this one before we get going with our presentation here. I think we're all on the same page for this one. So those of us joining us from YouTube, we had most of us, 60% of us thought it was C, 1.5 billion. About 40% of us thought it was D, 3 billion. And the correct answer is actually D. So 3 billion people, that's like almost half of the people on Earth get most of their protein from seafood. That's a lot. So clearly we need a lot of seafood to sustain all of that food around the planet. So today we're going to learn a little bit about sustainable seafood with our friends at OceanWise and Green Learning. So officially welcome and good morning to our secondary World Food Day event. This year, we're really trying to focus our events around the ocean because the ocean plays such an important role in kind of all of the things that we're learning about here at CGE. So yes, it is World Food Day, but we are specifically focusing on sustainable seafood today. So I would like to begin with a land acknowledgement. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm joining you guys from Amiskwaciwa Skyikan. So this is colonially known as Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory. It's a traditional gathering place and traveling route to many people, including the Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, Dene, and the Nakota Sioux. Since we're joining on a virtual platform, I would also like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the traditional territories that we are all joining on across Turtle Island and around the world, because I know that we do have some friends joining us from the other side of the globe today. So we do a land acknowledgement to reaffirm our commitment to improving relationships between nations and improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their connection to the land and water that we share. So I invite everybody participating to take a moment to think about the water that we share. Think about the actions that you take in your everyday life, and think about how those actions can affect not just the living things on the land around them, but in the oceans that connect us across the planet. This connection is a great focus point as we discuss sustainability and how we can work together to ensure that humans' relationship with water will continue to improve for many generations to come. Just a little idea of how this event is going to run. We have two guest speakers joining us today. We have Daphne Austin from OceanWise and Katie Biddy from Green Learning. We will let them both go ahead and do their presentations. Then we will save some time at the end for a facilitated discussion. So as we're going through the presentations, if you guys have any questions, you do not need to save them to the end. If you have a great question that's related to something that we're talking about, go ahead and type it in the chat and our speakers will try to get to it when they have a chance. As well, if you guys are joining us from YouTube and you have any great questions, type them in the chat and my colleague Sarah will send them over to Zoom so that we can see them and answer them as quickly as we can. I would like to, before I introduce our speakers, welcome all of our schools joining us. So I know a lot of you guys are not 9 a.m., 10 a.m. like we are over here, but it's actually the middle of the night. So some of you guys might not be joining us live right now, but I still wanted to give you a welcome and a hello because we do have people joining from all over the world. We've got India, Afghanistan, we've got our friends from Japan, all across Canada. So welcome to everybody. Thank you for taking the time to learn about sustainable seafood today. And I hope that you guys are going to enjoy this event as much as I am. So with that, I would love to introduce our speakers. So first up, we have Daphne Austin. Daphne is an online specialist for online learning and ocean literacy with OceanWise. She combines her expertise on the ocean from her Bachelor of Science in a combined major of oceanography and biology at the University of British Columbia with years of conservation education and outreach. An expert in connecting students to the ocean, she has advanced environmental awareness for thousands of students across North America and beyond. So good morning, Daphne. We're happy to have you today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to connect with everyone today, and especially to see where everyone is joining from. It's great to see that we have some different people, different cultures, different foods that we all are probably eating in our daily lives.
I know, I love that too. Getting people from around the world joining and actually getting people that have different diets is going to be very, very interesting. I hope we get some good questions about it.
Yeah, if you have any comments or kind of connections or anything like that in the chat, please let us know throughout.
Totally. I would also like to welcome our second speaker, Katie Biddy. So Katie is passionate about helping educators bring meaningful climate change education to their classrooms. She is the engagement manager at Green Learning and has nearly a decade of experience teaching environmental education. Maybe I'll do it after this. She has a Bachelor of Science and a Bachelor of Education and is an Ontario certified teacher.
There's only so many layers I can do. That's a light.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I'm also so excited to be here celebrating World Food Day. I'm a big fan of food, as I think probably everyone involved in the call today is. So yeah, it's just a great opportunity to connect with so many wonderful people.
Totally. Talking about seafood already has made me want to go out and eat some sushi. So I'm sure that I'll be having seafood for dinner. I don't know about everybody else on the call, but I am getting a little bit hungry already. Awesome. So thank you very much. We're happy to have you guys. I am going to pass it over to Daphne first so she can go ahead and start the presentation. And let's get this thing going.
Amazing. Well, I'm really excited to talk about food as well as some of that, sustainable seafood aspect that we at OceanWise like to focus on. But really, if you aren't familiar with OceanWise, we're a non-for-profit organization whose mission is to empower communities and individuals to take action and protect and restore our world's ocean. Because really, as you were saying, Rebecca, we're connected by water, we need water. And the ocean is a large part of that. So even if you are right in the middle of Canada, maybe you're in Afghanistan, far away from the coast, Rebecca, there's so much that we can still, so many ways that we can still be connected to the water and all of those folks around the planet, right? I think we're around 8 billion people now, so lots of ways that we're connected. And I'd also like to acknowledge that I'm actually joining you all from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, which is on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Peoples. It's also where OceanWise is based out of, and I'm really, really grateful that I can connect with you all today from these lands, as well as live, work, and play from here, right? I'm really grateful that I get to be able to do that. And as we go through the program, and as Rebecca was touching on before, I really want us to think about how we can better respect the land, water, and sky around us as they have since time immemorial. There's so many ways that we can make a big difference. And really by giving back to nature, by taking care of nature, it's gonna then take care of us. So there's so much that the ocean gives us, and we really rely on it for so many things like oxygen, food, livelihood. But really, we might think of the ocean in terms of just life, right? It's beautiful, there's lots of biodiversity. If we look at the Sustainable Development Goals, we might just think of number 14, life below water. But I want you to take a quick 5 to 10 seconds. If you're with someone else, you can chat amongst yourselves. What other Sustainable Development Goals do you think the ocean is connected to?
I feel like just from our introduction, there's already a couple that are popping up for me. So I don't know if you guys are all thinking the same.
I'm seeing some suggestions for, 6, clean water and sanitation. Yeah, zero hunger food. That's definitely going to be a big one that we'll focus on today. Really, we could go on and on and on about all of these connections. Yeah, definitely responsible consumption and production. And really, we can connect any one of these back to the ocean. It's such a crucial aspect of life. And so protecting it is going to then, in turn, protect us. We at OceanWise, we know that there are so many challenges that threaten the ocean. We've decided to tackle just 3 to focus on. That way we can make a bigger difference. And those 3 are climate change, ocean pollution, and overfishing. And you can see we've got different initiatives to kind of tackle each of these, such as looking into protecting whales, looking into plastics research, fisheries and seafood sustainability, focusing on conserving the Arctic, and even something you might not know of called seaforestation. But you might notice that in the middle of all of that is youth. That is all of us, right? We are all part of the change.
And then you just sit near him, but ignore him.
Remember that as we go through today. There's a lot that we can do.
If he's tired.
But I have a few questions for us. The first one being, to get to know you all a little bit better, what protein do you eat the most? Thank you, Rebecca. That's wonderful. We've got that poll up there going. You're welcome to put in the chat as well if you aren't able to answer in the poll. And if you're on YouTube, feel free to put that answer in the chat and we can hear from those as well.
You can tell we have a lot of people joining from Canada already based on the answers in this.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of folks saying meat. And yes, in North America, meat is definitely a huge proportion of protein. But yeah, maybe some seafood as well from YouTube, C and D, yeah. Maybe some B, some legumes, yeah, some beans and things like that. But you know what? It really depends on where in the world you live, right? Some folks might rely a lot on those beans and legumes. Maybe some folks on those nuts more. It really, really depends. So thanks for sharing, everyone. I really appreciate getting to know you a little bit more that way. And as Rebecca said before in the trivia, approximately 3 billion people rely on both wild caught and farmed seafood as their primary source of protein. So that means that even if you, say a lot of us in Canada who are joining today, we might have the privilege of having all of those different sources of protein available to us. But that doesn't mean that someone else across the world has that same access or that same privilege to those choices. So even if we might be able to say, hey, well, to help have more sustainable oceans, I'm just not going to eat seafood. That's great if you have that opportunity, but many people don't. And that's why we really need to make sure we can sustainably harvest from the ocean. One of the ways OceanWise is trying to do this is by helping inform people just like you and I. So this is an expanding program, and there's lots of other programs across the world that do other similar ways. But really, it's just making it obvious to consumers what is sustainable and what is not. So at OceanWise, we have our OceanWise recommended seafood logo that you can see in grocery stores or on restaurant menus. And that means that if you see that, it's kind of our seal of approval that we've done your homework for you and we have deemed that as a more sustainable choice, right? It might not always be a perfect choice, but it's going to be more sustainable and a smarter choice than maybe some of the other options around. because you can't always know exactly which items are going to be those sustainable options. So I'll let Claire from the seafood team tell us a little bit more.
OceanWise determines what is sustainable by looking at 4 different criteria. The first is the abundance of the fish. The second is whether the fish stock is well managed. The third is the impacts that it has on the habitat. And the fourth is bycatch, which is also known as the effects on non-target species. Sustainability depends on things like the exact species name, the area where it was caught, and the gear type that was used to catch it. So for that reason, we partner with businesses, figure out that research beforehand so that the consumer doesn't have to do it, and label the sustainable seafood directly on menus and packaging so that when people go out trying to find great things to eat, it's really easy for them to do so. You can look for the OceanWise symbol when you're dining out or buying seafood for assurance that it's ocean friendly.
So there are, as you heard, different ways that we need to make sure that that seafood is going to be a sustainable option. And this comes in to any food or any kind of resource that anyone is looking into choosing as a sustainable option. So I'd love to hear in the chat, kind of as I keep going, do you know of another sustainable food logo? There's lots out there. There's lots of different ways for us to kind of identify those items. And you know what? They're not all equal, right? Some are going to be better than others. That's okay. We're all trying our best out there, right? Yeah, so fair trade is one that we might see a lot of. Definitely maybe rainforest certified, things like that. So there's lots of those out there that you can take a look at, even if you don't have the OceanWise logo near you. But for the things that we like to look at is the species abundance. So how much of that species is going to be there? The management effectiveness. So how much are those goals actually being aligned with, right? We can say we want to fish sustainably, but if we're not actually doing it in practice, what's the point? The impacts to habitat. So what kind of gear are we using? What kind of tools? And how is that impacting the ecosystem or the benthic area, the bottom of the ocean around that? And also bycatch. How many or how much of what we're catching wasn't what we meant to catch? Well, it wasn't the targeted species. So tools and the ways that we're catching these species are really going to make a difference. It's just one thing I'm going to focus on today. And I'm going to use an example. So we have Pacific herring here. They are a small foraging fish. If you know Pacific salmon, very popular seafood item, they rely largely on these Pacific herring as a huge part of their diet. And one of the main ways that we're going to catch them is going to be with these massive nets called a pertains, where they're actually going to surround a large school of herring. And there's weights at the bottom that help do that. And then you can almost close it off like a purse at the bottom. And then you've caught a bunch of that herring. Now, you can either chat real quick with someone or you can throw some ideas in the chat. What would be some benefits and what would be some challenges or maybe negatives to this type of fishing? What do we think? Some pros and cons, maybe.
My first thought immediately goes to that net must be so heavy. I don't understand how a little boat has a gigantic net. Like, that's crazy.
Well, and I will say that bycatch can be a challenge in some of the larger animals that might get caught. If you get, say, a curious orca or another whale that's trying to come in and eat some of that food, that distribution of weight can be a big issue for those small boats because they actually have to kind of counter that weight on the other side with their ballast water. So they've carefully figured out what that is. And if someone accidentally sneaks in, it can actually be really dangerous for those fisher people as well. Yeah, so there's lots of pros and cons. One of the cons being that you're catching a lot at one time, right? So you're having a huge impact on that group in one go. Another thing is a lot of the time, those boats are gonna be a lot bigger. They can have a lot more emissions, carbon emissions, affecting the climate. But a really big benefit is you can catch a bunch at one time. So if you're trying to feed a lot of people, that's going to be a big benefit. You don't necessarily have to go out every single day. But again, you are catching a lot and that can be a big challenge, especially with big nets. Bycatch, those accidentally caught animals can be a big issue. But that doesn't mean that that's the only way to catch that species, right? With modern fishing, that's going to be what we're going to use the most because it's the cheaper way to go. It's more efficient. But traditionally, many coastal indigenous people along British Columbia would have used a different tool. So I'll give you a little bit of a closer look here. We have this wonderful, almost looks like a hockey stick to me, but we've got this long stick and it's got a whole bunch of spikes on the end. This is actually called a herring rake. And it would have been used to actually slap the water with the spikes and it would catch herring or ulken, which is another forage fish that's very important traditionally. And you would actually just put them right in your boat. Because we used to have so many of these fish that it looked like you could walk across the water on their backs. There were so many of them. So you could just slap the water and catch a bunch of fish. And you only needed to catch what you were going to dry for the winter or maybe eat for that day. So there's lots of different ways you can be more selective. Now, this is a more selective practice. We're really targeting that one species, but we aren't catching as much. So it might feed your small community, but it might not feed your entire country, right? But herring continues to give even more. The eggs or the roe are another huge food source for so many animals around the coast, as well as many communities. And that can be a huge food source as well. Now, one of the big benefits is you can actually harvest this straight from seaweeds and algae along the coast. So you don't actually have to have a big impact on the damaging the ecosystem or being intrusive in that environment. You can, even a lot of communities would even drop hemlock boughs, so kind of branches in water during spawning times, and they would actually spawn on those branches, and then you could easily take them out. No, it's not intrusive to that ecosystem, which I think is super amazing and super smart. Now, one of the crazy things is a lot of these animals are using these amazing kelp forests as a home to support these populations. But I have a question for you. So kelp forests, these beautiful algae, they cover 5 times more ocean area than coral reefs. Is that true or false? What do we think? Rebecca, are you able to launch that for me? Ah, beautiful. Let's see, I'll give you a quick 5 to 10 seconds. You can throw answers in the chat as well. I'm seeing a lot of trues. And you are correct. That is true. So these kelp forests cover large amounts of coastlines in temperate areas around the world. It's really important for so many other animals as well. All right, another true or false. Kelp forests are declining 2 times faster than coral reefs. What do you think? We're a bit more divided on this one. In this case, we are, if I can get it to go, there we go. True or false? It is true as well. So this is a huge ecosystem that supports a lot of life, and it's declining a lot. What Oceanwise and other organizations are trying to do is something called seaforestation. So this is where you're trying to restore, you're trying to plant and manage, and really caring for underwater seaweed forests.
The underwater forest, seaweed, are an extraordinary resource because they take CO2 out of the water to turn it into tissue that grow rapidly, that grow 30 times faster than terrestrial forests. Massive carbon drawdown is the greatest benefit that I see from seaweed expansion. We at Oceanwise believe that we can play a role in ensuring that the industry receives the best possible scientific guidance on how to maximize environmental returns, where to place their farms so that carbon sequestration is maximized, where to place their farms so that fisheries benefit, and how to carry out an operation that is safe and produce a product that is safe for everybody.
So as you might have heard from Carlos, there's a lot of benefits and a lot of amazing things that can come from supporting these kelp forests or even trying to grow even more seaweed. Some of those benefits are here, right? And the biggest one, some of the biggest ones that I think, is being able to potentially capture a ton of carbon because these grow so fast. They're actually going to grow around 30 to even more centimeters a day, so around a foot a day during the summer. So that's a lot of carbon that can get stored really quickly. And then we can actually bury that in the ocean sediments to actually kind of remove that carbon from that ecosystem. And that can help things like buffer ocean acidification. It can remove some of that excess nutrients in the area, can oxygenate the water. There's so much more that can be benefit from supporting these ecosystems. And not just kelp, but supporting ecosystems no matter where we are, right? These ecosystems store all this carbon, and that can really help us with fighting other challenges too, such as climate change. So there's a lot of benefits on food, climate change, and even just protecting these ecosystems. So really, what can we do? There's a ton that I'm sure there's so many connections that you were making. There's a ton that we can make. A few that I'm suggesting today are choose sustainable food options, right? It might not always be obvious, but take a look at or do a little bit of research into what sustainable food logos you see near you. Maybe there are some that can help guide your choices, right? We might not all have the means to choose the organic, super local, food, but just make one little choice, one little area that we can focus on. And supporting local is really a big one too, right? Supporting local means that there's usually less, a smaller carbon footprint as well as supporting communities and having that money stay in your community as well. And tell your friends and family, right? The more that we all know, the more we can all benefit. So thank you all so much. I'm really excited to hear what Katie has to add to this all today. So thank you all so much.
Thank you so much. And just so everybody remembers, Daphne will be here for the rest of the presentation. So if you have any more questions, we will have a little bit of time at the end of the hour to ask them. So feel free to pop them in the chat, hold on to them for now. But I would like to say thank you very much for that awesome presentation, Daphne. Super interesting, covered so much, but it was wonderful. So I will pass it over now to Katie Biddy of Green Learning to go ahead and share her presentation with us.
Gotta unmute, sorry. You'd think that I would have that figured out by now. Thank you so much, Rebecca, and thank you, Daphne. That was fantastic. I've shared my screen. Could you just give me a thumbs up if it's popped up and everyone can see it? Amazing. So yeah, so grateful to be here. And what I'm going to be sharing with you is a little bit about a program we have at Green Learning called the Ripple Effect. And what we're going to be learning about for the next 10 minutes or so is all about the blue economy. So I'll explain what that means in just a minute here. But a quick background about Green Learning itself. So I'm joining today from our organization called Green Learning. And what we do is we create free online education programs all about energy, climate change, and the green economy that engage and empower students to create positive change for our evolving world. So we are based all across Canada, and we have tons and tons of free resources for educators or even students to check out. So if you're curious about some of our different programs, please feel free to check out our website. It's greenlearning.ca, and I can put that into the chat before we sign off the call here today. So I also just want to acknowledge that I'm joining today from a city called Barrie, which is in Ontario in Canada. But Barrie is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people, which include the Ottawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi nations, which are collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. I also acknowledge that the Wendat Huron Nation occupied these lands prior to the middle of the 17th century. And I also, just like Daphne said, I'm very grateful that I get to live, work, and play on these lands that, the various First Nations groups who occupied this land for many years and continue to took such great care of. And I always try and consider in all of the decisions that I make how I'm going to continue that legacy and take good care of the land and the water. So what is the blue economy? My presentation, like I said at the start, it's all about the blue economy. And the first thing, when we think about the blue economy, I always want to discuss what the word economy actually means, because we hear it all the time in the news. The economy is good, the economy is bad. And what does that really mean? Well, the economy is basically just a word that describes the system in which people make and spend money or trade goods. So it refers to how people earn their money, where they spend their money, how we produce goods to make more money. It's all the system that involves a country, a nation, or a community's basically their money or goods. Now, the blue economy refers to the ways that the oceans, so worldwide, our oceans can contribute to the economy in a sustainable way. So when we refer to the blue economy, we're often thinking about how we can make sure our oceans stay clean and healthy so that they can continue to support people all across the world. So I've got a quick video here I'm going to show, and let me just press play here that talks all about the blue economy. Awesome. I love that video. So it kind of sums up, you can see that the blue economy impacts so many different people and so many different things. And it's important that we protect our oceans so that we can keep this up. Just to summarize some of the things that the ocean provides that support economies worldwide. The first thing is really jobs. So tons and tons of people work in jobs or work in careers or industries that rely directly on the ocean. So maybe they work in a fishery or in aquaculture, maybe even tourism. There's so many different careers that are supported directly by our oceans. Energy, a lot of energy or electricity that we use on our planet does come from the oceans as well, whether that's hydroelectricity or even electricity generated by things like oil that are fracked or taken from the ocean. Transportation is a huge benefit of the blue economy. So a lot of our goods, food, things, we're celebrating World Food Day, so a lot of our food or our different goods are transported worldwide across the seas. So the ocean provides us a transportation route to do trade with different countries. Tourism. So a lot of people love, as you know, I sure know I love to go to the beach or spend time near the ocean. And I know a lot of people do as well. And so tourism can bring a lot of money to the economy of different coastal towns, cities, countries, and people enjoy spending time near the ocean. And of course, food itself. So the ocean provides seafood like Daphne was talking about, and that's something that supports and feeds a lot of people worldwide. So just before I wrap up here, we're going to do another round of blue economy trivia. So I've got 3 questions for you, and I want to see how many out of 3 you can get correct. They are a little bit challenging, so don't get discouraged if you don't get the right answer on your first try. So the first question is, what percentage of global goods are transported by sea? So that means what percent of things that we move around our planet are transported by cargo ships or cargo vessels around the ocean? So is it A, 10%, B, 30%, C, 60%, or D, 80%? Actually, let me just open my chat here just in case answers are coming. Oh, awesome. Okay, we're kind of divided right now on the poll on Zoom here between C and D. And the correct answer here is actually 80%. So 80% of global goods are transported by cargo vessels. And I love this image here because if you think about the way I can relate to this image is if you imagine driving on a highway or a road, you see one of those great big transport trailers. Each of these containers here are those shipping containers that would then be transported from the port by using the transport trailers or the trucks to their final destination. But 80% of the things that we use on our planet, so whether that's electronics, clothes, food, it's all transported by ocean routes. So the next question is, by 2030, how many jobs worldwide will the blue economy support? So how many people by 2030 will have a job that's directly related to the ocean, whether that's in fisheries or aquaculture? We'll see, you can take a guess. Okay, I see a few answers coming in. We're kind of, I see a couple different options. I see B, C, D. Well, I think this one might surprise you as well. 350 million jobs worldwide supported by the blue economy. So that could be, this graphic here talks about specifically jobs related to fisheries. But like I mentioned before, these could be jobs in tourism. They could be jobs in aquaculture. There's so many different roles that are related to our oceans. But tons and tons of people are employed by fisheries. And it makes sense because so many people worldwide rely on seafood as a main source of protein, like Daphne was talking about. And finally, my third question, this one's a little bit more, I guess, sad maybe, but how much plastic, so plastic in metric tons, was put into the ocean in 2021? So whether it was through runoff or it was simply just taken from landfill and released into the ocean, how much plastic was put into the ocean? Was it A, 8,000 metric tons, B, 800,000 metric tons, C, 17 million metric tons, or D, 25 million metric tons? All right, and some answers are already coming in. Yeah.
You were not joking. These are tricky questions. I've never seen a poll question with such a mixture of answers. So good work trying these ones, guys.
For sure. We like to keep things challenging. Okay, I see a few answers in, and I think people were following my trend of it was usually the highest number, but this one I made a little bit trickier. 17 million metric tons. Which is so much plastic. That's so much plastic that we're adding to our oceans. And when we consider the previous questions, right, how many people rely on jobs in fisheries, it's kind of scary to think of how much, we rely on our oceans, but we're also contributing a fair amount of harm. So you might have heard of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. And I was reading online this morning trying to get an update of their estimated size, and it fluctuates a lot. But what I was reading this morning was they say that the garbage patch has grown to twice the size of the state of Texas. So a huge, huge patch of floating plastic in the ocean. And this is really harmful to our ocean habitats and ecosystems, which we directly rely on for things like seafood and for the blue economy. So like Daphne mentioned, Green Learning is partnering up with OceanWise and taking it global for our Waves of Change program. And this program is really meant to inspire youth to take action and make ripples of change in their community or in their on their coastlines. So that's it for me. Thank you so much. And if you were able to guess for all three of my trivia questions, you can type in the chat now how many out of 3 you were able to guess correctly if you'd like.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if anybody got 100%.
Yeah.
There were some good guesses. So thank you very much for the presentation, Katie. That was wonderful. Awesome to hear about the blue economy. And now I'm interested to see if anybody participating today is going to be working for the blue economy one day, because I could definitely see it. Okay. So I do have one more little activity that I would like you guys to try before we kind of close this up. That's fine. I'm just going to share it with you in the chat, but I do have a QR code as well. So this is a little quiz that you guys can participate in. So it's going to let you know what sea creature you are, but it also gives us a little bit of information about how you felt about the presentation. So you can either, if you're on a computer, you can scan that QR code with your phone, or if you're already on your phone, you can go ahead and click on that link that I just shared with you, and it's going to bring you to a little quiz. It's only like 6 questions. Just asking you a few questions about the ocean and a little bit about what you learned today, and it will let you know what sea creature you are. So while we kind of get going on our question and answer section, you can feel free to take the time to quickly answer these questions as well. But while we get this quiz up and running, I would also like to invite you to go ahead and put your questions into the chat. Or, because I do know we have quite a few of us that are actually able to join on camera today, if you would like to ask your question on camera, you can just use your little reaction button to raise your hand, and I can call on you to ask your question out loud. So it would be awesome. Everybody participating today could take some time to think about 1 or 2 good questions that you could ask these wonderful presenters about ocean sustainability. Or as well, after you're done your quiz, you are welcome to share with us what sea creature you got. And if there are 1 or 2 of you, you can go ahead and try the quiz a couple times and let us know what sea creature you have. So yeah, take some time to put some questions in the chat as well on YouTube. If you guys have questions, you can send them over and we can see them as well. And I do see that we have 1 question in the chat, and I see Ian has his hand up as well. So I'm going to go ahead and call on Ian first. Good morning. Hello from Canada to Kenya. Go ahead and ask your question, Ian.
Good evening, everyone. I have a question for Daphne. So among some of your questions, the true or false ones, there was a question on, okay, no, it wasn't a question, but there was a point that there is, I think it was 5 times more, there were 5 times more, okay, it was plant species.
The kelp forests?
Yeah, that was 5 times more than coral reefs. And I was really surprised by that because I thought coral reefs were mostly in the ocean. So where are they located, and how, when they're being planted, where are they located?
That's a great question. So those kelp forests are kind of coastal, just like those coral reefs, and they're going to be kind of following coastlines. We'll see a lot of those coral reefs largely in tropics. We do see some corals in cold water as well. But we are seeing those kelp forests in a lot of the temperate areas, so a little bit farther north. And I imagine that just there's a lot, like the temperate area has a lot of coastline. So there's a lot there. Now, I would say also that we saw that they're declining twice as fast as coral reefs, which is really scary. And I would say that is in certain areas more so than others. I know that some of the kelp forests along the coast of Chile are doing a lot better than others in the world. So there's a lot of ways that we can hopefully support some of those that are doing really well, as well as maybe have those ecosystems help seed other areas, kind of like we're trying to do with coral reefs, and seed some of those healthy reefs to some of those unhealthy ones. But really, it just means that we have a lot of amazing biodiverse habitats that we need to support, really. So thanks so much, Ian. I really appreciate that question.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ian. Okay, next question is, what's one type of seafood that's sustainable and one that is not? I don't know if there's like a yes or no, but off the top of your head, do either of you know like a usually good choice and a usually bad choice?
I would say it really depends. Kind of think back to those 4 that OceanWise uses, right? A lot of it depends on where things are being caught. So even seafood items that I eat here in Canada, it really depends on where, right? Even along the coast of Canada, where it was caught, because some populations might be doing better than others. So you could have, an entire, maybe all of this one population of fish not suggested, but there's this one section that's doing really well, that is okay to fish. So it depends. I would say though, for species to avoid, that's easier to say. And I would say, I know it's delicious, but there's a lot of tuna that is not doing great. And especially because it's a large fish, it's really high up in the, trophic cascade, or up there in, it's a high level predator. So it also has it takes a lot of energy to get that food. If you can try and choose items that are smaller or lower down in the food chain, that has a slightly smaller impact on the ocean. But also, you know, there's a lot of factors that go into if that, you know, maybe forage fish is a little bit more sustainable than others. I also would say that if you can avoid a lot of shrimp, there's a lot of problems with some of the shrimp. So, or that just means do a little bit of extra homework to find that shrimp that's more sustainable. And one of the more sustainable options you might more consistently be okay with, at least here in Canada, is bivalves. So say oysters and mussels, some things like that are really easy to farm in the ocean sustainably, and they're even cleaning the ecosystem while they're there. So that's maybe one that tends more towards that sustainable side.
Yeah, that's very cool. I'm thinking back to the tuna one. I don't know about everybody watching, but I also do love tuna. I was just watching a documentary the other day, because the great thing about tuna is you buy those cans, they're super cheap, super easy. But they were saying that like within 20 years, tuna is going to become like a very, very expensive fish that you only get in fancy restaurants. So that's really too bad, because it is super duper delicious. Awesome. Okay, the next question, I think I can maybe throw this one over to Katie. This one's about investing and establishing in the green economy, especially in Alberta. Is there different implications for provinces across Canada? So it says here, investment, raising taxes, cost of them, their parents. Do we have kind of any thoughts about the cost to us of moving towards a blue economy or a green economy?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And absolutely, as our economies like currently exist, especially as I'm sure you're aware in Alberta, it's a lot more reliant on the oil and gas industry right now, which when we think about the green economy, we're wanting to move away from oil and gas. So absolutely, that concern is very valid. Like if people are relying on the oil and gas industry to make their living, what's going to happen if we want to phase that out? Now there's been a lot of technological advance in the oil and gas industry to make those processes more sustainable, which is awesome. And then there's also been a lot of advancements when it comes to renewable energies and in making them more cost effective. So I'm actually just going to put a link in the chat here because I have a resource that I think your class will find really, really useful. And it's Green Learning's Re-Energy program. There's all sorts of different kind of modules that talk through the different types of renewable energy sources. So like solar, wind, and it also talks, there's a couple programs that discuss, you know, the challenges with oil and gas as they exist right now. I'm going to put that in the chat there. And then I've also just got another resource I want to share as well, which has electrical energy across Canada. So anyone who's joining from Canada, you can use this resource to see how your province, where your electricity is generated from. So again, it really changes across our different provinces. So here in Ontario, we get a lot of our electricity from hydro, so from water sources, whereas in Alberta, most of your electricity, I think, is generated from the oil and gas industry. So it's just a cool thing to sort of look into and see how the different provinces generate their electricity differently. But that's a great question.
Yeah, and I actually did pop onto that website that you shared the other day, and it's super interesting to see because Canada is such a giant country, how different the energy production is. And I mean, like we have friends joining from Kenya, from China. I'm sure we all get our energy from very, very different sources. So that is super interesting. Okay, one last question before we start to do our wrap up. How did both of you get into your careers? So the students would like to hear a little bit of background of how you got to where you are today. So we'll start with Daphne.
It's a great question. I love talking about this. I was really lost in what I wanted to do when I was all your age, but I knew that I really enjoyed science and learning about that and kind of the natural world. But when I was in university, I was very confused on what I wanted to do and tried to do a bunch of different classes to sort of figure out what I really enjoyed. And it was actually the marine biology section of a biology class that really intrigued me. And then I actually ended up really liking some of the more bigger picture ideas. So not just, the relationship between these two animals, but how does, say, this ecosystem support the larger planet? And that's kind of where I went more towards the oceanography side with that bigger picture. But I ended up with the education side because I realized through trial and error and a lot of volunteering opportunities that I was not great in a lab or for research. So I really enjoyed talking to people about what I knew. So I started volunteering and I really if you have the means to be able to volunteer, or try to look for paid internships places, because it's a great way to explore what you're interested in before committing.
Really awesome. Sounds good. Katie.
Daphne, I feel like I have a very similar story. When I was in high school, I was really interested in wildlife. I always said I wanted to become the next Jane Goodall. Like I wanted to go study chimpanzees in the forest somewhere. I thought that would be cool. So I actually studied zoology at university, which I loved. But similar to you, Daphne, I found towards the end of my experience at university, I realized my favorite part about learning about animals and learning about wildlife is actually sharing it with others. So that's kind of what led me. I became a teacher. So I went to teachers college and I became a teacher. And most recently, I've been completing my master's in community engagement, where we focus a lot on public policy. And I just share that because that's a career field I didn't even know existed. And policy is really what we need in the workforce of policy is people who are willing to learn and become the experts on a topic so that they can inform decision makers to make good choices and good policies. So definitely, if you're looking to make an impact in the world, that's a field I would recommend. But my favorite thing to do is do this and talk to people, share my passions. So that's why that's what's led me to where I am today.
Yeah, it's dangerous to ask educators how you got into what you're doing. I don't think anybody loves their job as much as people who educate. So thank you very much for sharing your stories to both of you. I do have a couple links I wanted to share with everybody participating today, because our presenters here today did have a few things that they wanted to share with you. So I put them up on the screen, but I'll also pop them in the chat so that you guys can see them. So we have a couple links from OceanWise here. One is for our Waves of Change program that actually all of our companies work on together, and the other one is for the OceanWise education. So if you're an educator and your students are learning about anything in the ocean and you would like to do more of these video conferences or get some education kits sent to you, that's where you guys can check out. And then the last one here is for the Ripple Effect, which is through Green Learning. So that's just another link to some more educational resources that Green Learning has. I'm just going to leave this stuff on the screen for a minute so that any of our educators watching can take a minute to jot it all down. While this is up, I do have one final question for both of you. Any last words of wisdom or takeaways that you have for the students that are participating today? So again, I'll start with Daphne.
I just like to say thanks so much for joining us all. There's so many ways that we can have positive impacts on our own lives and the world around us. And, that comes from food as well as, any choices that we can make and, how we can, connect with others and help us all together make an even bigger impact. So there's so many ways to get involved with the ocean. It doesn't have to be education career-wise. There's so many. So I encourage you to just enjoy learning about the ocean more.
Awesome. How about you, Katie?
Yeah, I think I would just leave you on the note of doing your very best to focus on the positives, especially when we talk about scary things like there being so much plastic in the oceans and like the blue economy being at risk. It can feel very sort of scary, but don't let it stop you from taking action, because we do have all the solutions. We already have the solutions to solve, our problems like climate change. We just have to all work to putting them into place. So stay focused on what we can each do and the roles that we can each play, instead of worrying too much or being too afraid of the challenges that we're currently facing. Stay positive. I know that sounds kind of easier said than done, but I think that's something that's helped me stay focused on climate action.
Yeah, I know it can be hard when we do these education things where we learn about all of these problems that we're facing to come out with a positive attitude, but things can get better, and they do get better when we take the time and energy to work on the environment. So I hope that everybody watching today comes out with a positive view on what they can do to help, because I do think that you guys gave us a lot of really good information for that. Quickly, before I do my final thank you, if you guys enjoyed this event, or if you think you know someone who would want to do an event similar to this, this is the QR code that you can use to sign up for more events that are similar. We will be going to COP, the International Climate Change Conference, in just a few weeks. So if you wanted to participate in some live from COP events, this is where you would sign up for those. So just one more little interesting link to send your teachers. And of course, if you didn't get a chance to do the what sea creature quiz are you, I'll just pop that one in the chat one more time. It would be awesome if everybody participating today could go ahead and try that quiz. I really want to know how many sea turtles and sharks we have out there. So go ahead and do that quiz if you didn't get a chance to. I'd like to take one more opportunity to say thank you very much. Thank you very much to our speakers. That was amazing. I learned so much, and I took biology in school, so I'm sure the students learned a ton. I'd like to say thank you to all of the students that participated today. You guys had wonderful questions. Thank you for joining me in the middle of the night in your countries. I'm sure you must be so tired. It's wonderful to be able to see your guys' faces and participate with you. So yeah, thank you very much to everybody that participated today. And that wraps up our event. So thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your night or day or wherever you guys are joining us from. Thank you. Yes, thank you, thank you. I see some coral, shrimp, sea turtles, wonderful. Thank you, yep, that sounds awesome. Thanks for the virtual